Hi, I'm Sharmen from the Marriage Recovery Center, and today I want to take just a few minutes to unpack a little bit about covert emotional abuse. To start with, let me define emotional abuse for you. The working definition we use here at the Marriage Recovery Center is that emotional abuse is an ongoing pattern of destructive, controlling behaviors used to gain and maintain control over another person for one's own benefit at the expense of the other person. And then secondary abuse is when a person's abuse is overlooked or dismissed in all the same ways by a trusted advisor. Emotional abuse is essentially an ongoing pattern of powering over another person so that that person loses their freedom to exercise their right and responsibility to decide how they show up in the world and who they are. So when does something become abuse and not just bad behavior? That's the question of the day. Bad behavior isn't necessarily about powering over other people. The person primarily hurt by bad behavior is the person doing the behavior themselves. So it's more often most of the harm is on oneself and the random people that choose to associate with him or her. It may still be self-serving, egocentric, dangerous, destructive, bullying, but it isn't seeking the degree of control over the other that abusive behavior entails. It becomes abusive when it is an ongoing pattern of powering over another person to that person's detriment and eventual silencing. Bad behavior is still bad behavior and still needs to be confronted and addressed so those people can grow up and mature and have healthy relationships. But abusive behavior is bad behavior taken to the level of taking away the personhood of those around him or her. The victim loses their freedom to exercise their right and responsibility to think and act for themselves and feel unable actually to extricate themselves from the harm. So let me differentiate covert from overt abuse. Overtly abusive behaviors are, as the name implies, the obvious ones. It's the yelling, the name calling, the slamming doors and stomping feet, and clearly displaying disapproval or disgust. It is the nonverbal signals that someone is in a foul state of mind with demeanor that is threatening, controlling, and ugly. Overt behavior tends to be those things done to someone else. Covert abuse, on the other hand, is more often an outward appearance actually that looks non-threatening, even loving or caring, but under the surface is controlling and dogmatic, leaving no room for the other people. Covert abuse is often less about what's dished out to people and more about what's been withheld. It looks like neglect, it looks like abandonment, it looks like lack of affection or lack of empathy, withholding connection, silent treatment, stonewalling, not making room for another person's perspective or feelings. It's withholding behaviors. Covert abuse includes any type of underhanded or deceitful behavior on the part of the abuser used to manipulate the others in order to get what they want with no regard for the other's input or their needs. It is underhanded and sneaky, like sarcasm or a backhanded compliment. It is feigning ignorance or forgetting. It is claiming good intentions, but never acknowledging the harm the harm or the impact, regardless of what the intention was. It is ever-changing rules and expectations, or rules with exceptions or parameters that you are left to guess and then are punished for because you don't guess correctly on that day in the mood that they're in. The covert abuser comes across as very diplomatic. They make sense. They're easygoing. They seem kind on the surface. But it is always at the expense of your contribution to the conversation. Your perceptions, your conclusions, your feelings, your memories are all very gently talked into becoming something else. Something he decides they are, or what he decides they mean. The problem, according to the abuser, is your perception of the behavior. It's your perception of what's going on, not the behavior itself. So the arguments become about how you deliver your concerns or why you might be hurt. Or they're about his offense that you're now in distress because of his behavior. And it devolves into him making you rescue him from the pit of shame he's now sitting in because you're distressed at his behavior. He says things like, "I'll never be good enough for you. I just can't get it right, can't do it right." Instead of addressing your distress, he makes you rescue him from his distress because you're distressed. It's all crazy making. So covert is very, very subtle. It's not any one offense that looks like a huge thing. It's these little offenses that have accumulated over time that become a death by 1,000 paper cuts. I'm sure you've heard that before. The end result is that the victim lives in this constant state of confused anxiety or anxious confusion. They are often unable to trust their own experiences, their own perspective, or their own choices. At this point, she looks to others to tell her what to do and how to think, as she's been groomed to by this relationship. By the time she comes to counseling, the only thing she really knows for sure is that she is no longer able to cope with the dissonance between his words and his actions and the chaos in her own head. So if you are experiencing these same kinds of symptoms of dissonance and chaos in your marriage, give us a call. We specialize in helping individuals and couples heal from emotional abuse, and we would love to step in and help you as well.